Hey guys, this is Joseph Lucero, Powerlifting Technique, and today what we're going to talk about is the hip thrusting exercise, why you want to perform it, and how it's going to help you become a stronger athlete today. So the hip thrust traditionally is done on the floor with a barbell in your lap, and you bring it up to a lockout position, and it isolates the hip joint. So what muscles does the hip thrust work? So it's going to work primarily your glute maximus muscle. So that's the biggest and strongest muscle of the body, and it supports the hip joint. So right here, and the glute max helps your hips go from a flexion and an extension position inside the sagittal plane, and it complements the other glute muscles, the medius and minimus. But with hip extension, like I mentioned before, the hip thrust is a great exercise because it provides tension from start to finish. Now, I'm gonna pull a bench over here, and I'm gonna show you guys what the traditional one looks like without the bar in my hands. So most people will get a loaded bar, and they'll position it in their hip joint, and then they'll elevate into a lockout position. And that's 100% engagement. But the problem I feel with a barbell hip thrust is it's kind of a pain to set up, to maneuver underneath, and it's actually can be a little of a problem like on the hip joint. It kind of feels a little painful. I didn't want to use the word painful, but I went ahead and used it anyway. But there's another hip thrusting variation that I really enjoy that I think can give you just as much benefit or even more. And it's just a standing band resisted hip thrust. So I'm gonna set it up in the squat rack. So if you guys wanna come over here and check it out, this can be done with any squat rack. And in fact, I can use my J hooks as well. So I'm gonna take my J hooks and I'm gonna set it up just about hip height. Take this one, set it up right here, just about hip height. And how this will work is you will get the band horizontal, and then from here, you'll get it into your lap. So I'm gonna work my shirt just a little bit. You'll work forward a little bit more, and now you can perform the hip thrusting exercise from here and then into a lockout position, and that'll challenge your glute muscle from a standing position. Now, you don't have anything to support yourself, so what I typically do in my squat rack is I'll take the bands and I'll actually tie it around the inside of my rack, so where the plates are. Gotta get a little creative. I used one of my bigger bands that has a little bit more slack. Usually you can get all the plates off, but I can maneuver this thing without having to worry about that. So there you go. But I'm gonna set it on my hip joint, and now I have something to oppose myself. So now I can work into a lockout position, bring it back, lockout position, bring it back. And all I'm working on primarily is a hinge pattern. So if I work out of here, the primary mechanism of this movement is a hinge. The hips have to go backwards and forwards. But when you do like a squat and a deadlift and you get to a lockout position, you don't get all that same resistance you would with the hip thrust. So some people think, well, what about squatting and deadlifting? Aren't those similar exercises to like a hip thrust? The problem is though, that as I get to lockout, I'm not getting that engagement like I would get against a horizontal band. So that's a big limiter as well with traditional squats and deadlifts. And I've talked to several people who are very strong and very capable in the sport of powerlifting and strongman, and they tell me that a hip thrusting exercise is a must for their routine. So I definitely recommend, if you're able to use the barbell, that's fine, but I would advocate for this standing band resisted version, because what's also great about this too is when you squat, when you deadlift, when you sandbag load, when you do the stone lift, all those things are from a standing position. Why not do a hip thrust from a standing position? Now, I'm gonna walk over here and grab another band. I'm gonna set it back up in the front, because one thing people will tell me when they do this hip thrust is that when they hinge, they feel it in their hamstrings as well. And I've told people, if you feel it in the hamstrings, but you want to feel it just in your glutes, you can put the J hooks lower, work the bands across here, and now you can do it from a kneeling position, and that'll eliminate your hamstrings. Because with the hip thrust, the primary muscle being used is the glute max, but because we're hinging from a standing position, you could also get your hamstrings involved too. So that could be a limiter as well. But there's another exercise you can do to add even more to your deadlift, just because this makes sense for a deadlift. And this one is a hip thrusting variation. But we call it the horizontal band deadlift or RDL, depending on how you perform it. You can walk forward, you can hinge down, and then you can go into lockout. And then from there, when you get to the top of every rep, you're hitting the hamstring, the glutes, and you're front loading your body like you're deadlifting, and you'll get much more transfer to your strength from there. So all in all, the hip thrust is a great exercise used to support your hip joint, which corresponds to your glute max, which strengthens you into flexion and extension of the sagittal plane. And because it works that muscle and in that motion, it's going to help you squat your deadlift. And one of the ways I enjoy doing it is with the band and using variations like the horizontal band Romanian deadlift or deadlift as well. And I feel like if you could integrate this into your program as soon as possible, you'll see massive growth in your glutes, in your strength, and primarily your lockout as well. So my name is Joseph Lucero with Powerlifting Technique. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, leave a comment below, subscribe, like the channel, and hopefully we'll catch you next time.